Hey everybody, welcome back to the Boston-Raleigh channel. We're actually going to do something a little bit different today and go over all of these different governor races, gubernatorial races, however you prefer. It's a little bit different from our channel's normal content just because I do like to try and predict things. I'm very fond of predicting stuff. I don't know. I'm very fond of predicting things, and kind of like the NFL, the stock market. This is a little bit hard to predict sometimes, although you can follow certain trends and you can make certain guesses and assumptions, especially in the governor races where partisan politics doesn't matter nearly as much as the candidates themselves and just the feel of the year. Of course, this is going to be in a red wave year. Assumedly, 2022 is going to be a red wave year, and based on what happened in Virginia and New Jersey, those states coming down to only a couple points each, that shouldn't have been that close. It was a pretty big shock, and yeah, you already have these colored in as safe states for each party just because they've already happened. This is a 2021/2022 map, so I had to do those before we even started the video. And of course, I'm not going to try and make this incredibly partisan. There's going to be a little bit of political discussion just because it happens to be a video on elections, but I'm not a particularly partisan person. I do have my biases just like everyone else does, but I really do think that these races are more about who the candidates are and how the year is going than sort of partisan politics. And so I don't think it really needs to come down to nuances like that. I'll save the spiciest. This is going to be a spicy hot take video. Going to be a lot of gnashing of teeth and wailing at all my incredibly based hot takes, but I don't know. I think the Senate one that I probably do next month will be a little bit spicier. But yeah, without further ado, gotta get into this. And before we do that, I'd like to characterize some of these characterizations here. You're gonna see certain colors and have to figure out what they mean. Right here, you have the highest shade of red, and I guess actually I'll do it with these as well, just to kind of show you. Oh wait. Just to kind of show you the blue, different shades of blue, different shades of red. So these states are going to be considered as follows. Not the states in particular, but states with these colors. This is kind of my key for the video. The deep dark red means, whoops. Deep dark red or blue means solid or safe, meaning that the candidate will likely win by 15% or more. Not Geico, but just sort of election insurance. An above 15% margin of victory is considered safe. This is what I'd be like going from anywhere from 15 plus to, I don't know, 30 plus, 40 plus, depending on how one-sided some of these races are. These next colors down from the top are likely, meaning that the race would be between 5 and 15% margin of victory. And those will probably be a lot of these races. Realistically, governor's races aren't nearly as solid as I was saying before. Generally, for the incumbent and for the parties in general, you have the very light shades, meaning leans. There are 1 to 5% margins of victory, where it's going to be really close and contentious, kind of like how Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, how they usually are. Maybe Georgia a little bit closer last cycle. And obviously, these last two colors are going to be even lower than that. Anything below 1% is a tilt margin. And those are for states that go by about a hair or so. Obviously, you see generally tilt margins in just about every large election cycle. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into some of these. Sorry that the map moves a little. But it's my first time doing this, so I'm just using the map I have. And yeah, I think we're going to characterize a lot of states right off the bat. Maybe less than in like a Senate prediction video. A lot of these states are going to be solid for the incumbent party, for the party that generally does well here. I think this is, again, going to be probably a large Republican wave year. You saw very big margins of victory in Virginia and New Jersey. Or at least very big shifts in partisan margins. In essence, being victories for the GOP, because Virginia wasn't necessarily supposed to be won by the Republicans. New Jersey was supposed to be a safe state. I think that the incumbent only won it by about 2 or 3 points. Same thing with Virginia. Glenn Youngkin, the governor there, he beat the former incumbent by 2 or 3 points. So a lot closer than the normally blue states usually go. But yeah, red wave year, I think you're going to see a lot of states kind of go just pretty red like that. I don't think I really need to get into these as much. Same thing with a few of these other states that I'm going to characterize as safe blue. You got Hawaii, just usually very Dem. California, Gavin Newsom did not see that political shift in California, so not very likely you're going to see a lot of contentious stuff there. I think Gavin Newsom's just going to kind of walk away with it, just like he did before. I think you're going to see Rhode Island go solid. Rhode Island didn't go super solid in 2018, but I think given the narrative and the climate right now, just in politics, I think it could go plus 15. I think that's kind of like one of my oddball guesses, because most partisan, like Cook and Real Clear Politics, most of the partisan leanings on Rhode Island, they're not all that solid, but that'll kind of be my first hot take for the night is Rhode Island. Massachusetts and Maryland, I think, are pretty easy flips. They're originally Republican governors, both retiring, both incredibly moderate. Probably just a little bit less moderate than Phil Scott of Vermont, who we'll get into in a second, but very moderate. We're able to win in states that are incredibly blue, 2 of the blue states in the country. And you're going to see, I think you're going to see them both flip back blue. It's always possible that I get one of these wrong or really, really wrong. I mean, I don't think I'll get the Senate ones really, really wrong, but some of these could be really, really wrong just because, again, governor elections aren't always as solid or as predictable as they usually, or as state politics generally go. Governors races are a lot more to do with just the feel at the moment. So obviously this video is going to need an update closer to the election itself. I do think that Vermont will be going solid red. Like I said, Phil Scott, very kind of, people call him maybe a rhino. I would say he's the most Democratic Republican out of all of the major legislatures or governors or anything like that in the country. Any of the mainstream ones, at least. Phil Scott is very left-leaning for a Republican, and he also has an incredibly high approval rating, as does his next-door neighbor, Chris Sununu, who both of them actually, I think, won their, because New Hampshire and Vermont, they're up every 2 years. They're the only 2 states that do this for their governor elections. They both won in 2020 by about 30 points or more, which is kind of insane, especially when you consider, like, Vermont voted the most to the left in 2020 for Joe Biden, more so than any other state. I mean, Massachusetts and Maryland were comparable. Hawaii and California were comparable. It's just Vermont was the #1 left-leaning state, voting more solidly blue than anywhere except for D.C. But yeah, they'll vote solidly for a red candidate too. Sometimes it just depends on the right candidate, the right time, the right circumstances. We're gonna also say that the Republican state of Texas is going to be solid, and this is going to be possibly one of my hottest takes of the night. Beto is not going to be a good candidate. Beto O'Rourke, the Democratic nominee, he's going to be abysmal because he really took a very hard stance against two-way rights, whatever you want to call it, guns, gun control, etc. He said, hell yes, we're going to take your guns during the presidential primary. He wanted to impress people in his own party. I thought at the time he was sacrificing the ability to run in Texas ever again statewide. But he decided, no, he's going to go for governor. And he pivoted away pretty hard from the anti-gun rhetoric, but it's going to come back. I can't imagine anyone being incompetent enough to not let this come back from the GOP side. I really think Beto's going to lose by about 15, 20 points just because no moderate in Texas, or I shouldn't say no moderate, but very few moderates are probably going to vote for him. They'll probably spend an incredible amount of money because they love spending money in Texas on both sides of the aisle. Democrats are going to love spending money because they want to try and flip it. Republicans are going to love spending money because if they can prevent it from being flipped, that really is a big boon for them. But I think that Beto is going to go down in flames. Greg Abbott, of course, he won in 2018 by over 10%. I think he's going to have a safe margin of victory here. I don't think it's going to be that difficult. Actually, the reason why we're doing this whole thing today specifically is because tonight we have the Texas primary, and it's going to be the first primary in the country, and I wanted a pre-primary kind of take on all these. So, glad we're starting off the sort of considerably less solid states by general metrics, but not by mine. I'll say that Texas is going to go solid red. I don't believe that too many states are really going to go all that solid. Actually, I think I'll add New York to the list for the Democrats just because I think Kathy Hochul, she is going to do a way better than Andrew Cuomo ever would have, because she is not really the incumbent in the sense that she hasn't had time to screw up. I think the incumbency is a detriment more than an advantage at this point in a lot of ways. Outside of primaries, of course. Primaries, it's still an advantage, but in general elections, I don't think incumbency is an advantage. I know all the poli-sci students are going to hate me for saying this. They're going to all disagree. Just go and have fun with your professors or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what poli-sci students do. It seems like they get into some sort of hijinks, but they're going to be wrong on this. I think that New York is going to have a very easy time re-electing their governor. At least they're not really re-electing, but electing to a full term now. Republicans are going to likely take Iowa and Ohio by likely margins. Kind of redundant, but likely they will be likely. I think that's fair to say. I think that they're going to be in the upper section of likely, being closer to 15% than 5. I think above 10 is very easy for both of these races, and also for South Carolina as well. I think that these three states are all kind of just going to go likely are in a lot of the future elections. Of course, they have a lot of Democrat presence in each of those states, but I don't think that they're really going to get that through with the voters. I think that the voters, especially in Ohio and Iowa, feel very off-put by the Democratic Party recently. South Carolina, it's just too hard to ratchet it all the way to the left. I mean, they tried with Lindsey Graham. They spent a ton of money because they really hated Lindsey Graham, and all they got it to was plus 10 for Graham, and it was an abysmal failure on the part of the Democrats. And maybe just more so of an unmet expectation that they were going to make South Carolina competitive. So yeah, I just think that those races aren't going to be all that competitive. Kansas, I think, also is going to go likely R. Only because, really, Laura Kelly, I believe is her name, she is the incumbent Democrat governor of Kansas, and I think it's not going to be safe because she is well-liked enough that she'll get moderate support, but the tide of the year, I think, is going to knock her out. This is going to be I guess, our third flip of the day, given that Massachusetts and Maryland were the first two. Alaska, I think, is also going to go Republican likely. Mainly because it has a ranked choice voting system now with a jungle primary and everything that they introduced back in 2020. Alaska is not going to be easy for Democrats to win now. That's mainly because all of the independents will eventually get shuffled in to one side or the other, or the independent will become the main candidate and Democrats just won't win that way unless they run someone as an independent. I think Alaska's going to be a pretty good turnout for the GOP. I think they've been underrated. They're being called the next swing state, and I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, especially with the jungle primary and ranked choice voting that they introduced. Florida is going to be our last likely GOP state for the day. I think that Ron DeSantis will easily clean house just because he's very popular with the citizens there. He's considered to be the front runner right now if Donald Trump does not run for the 2024 Republican presidential nominee. And I think there's some good reason for that. I think that his messaging has been very much sort of not super highbrow, upper class kind of messaging, but really something that gets to the heart of a lot of voters. He's a very, very much of an everyman compared to some of the other people there, like Rick Scott. I think that he's just going to do a very good job in that race. I think he's going to completely demolish whoever the Democrat nominee is, but not quite enough. I mean, it is Florida, not quite enough to get all the way to 15 points. It's possible. I just don't see it. I know a lot of Republicans will be mad at me for saying that Abbott's going to have a way better time than DeSantis, but I think that's just the nature of the candidates, and especially the candidates they're running against. Now, of course, you see, we're almost at the point where Republicans have a majority, although I believe there is a conference type kind of body that the governors partake in, but I don't believe it has any real significance or consequence to actual policy making. Who is in the majority in that? I mean, this is just kind of a majority for counting purposes. Um, it really matters each state who is the governor, and not really country as a whole. Although the country is made up of 50 states and greatly affected by all this. I'm going to say that Republicans will probably take the lead, as you can guess, with only likely states characterized so far. They've already got 25 out of the 26 necessary to hit that majority. I do think that it doesn't necessarily matter who's in the majority, other than who wins in each state. So I don't think that's a huge spoiler. Going into the Democrat likelies, we're going to have Oregon, we're going to have Illinois, we're going to have Connecticut. And some people are not going to be happy with me for only having this many likelies, but the only other one I could possibly use Colorado. I'm not super certain on that. Likely, I really think they're all going to be likely just because they're not particularly safe ever for the Democrats, really. I think all of them were within... All of them, I think Connecticut was... in 2020, I think Connecticut was Joe Biden plus about 18 or 19, Illinois plus 17, Oregon plus about 16 or 17 for Joe. Any slight ratcheting over will bring it into likely. If you give some more pull to the Republicans, especially with what they were able to do in the New Jersey and Virginia races last year, I think that likely is very easily doable for all of these. Honestly, I probably should put Rhode Island as likely, but I just think it's going to be safe somehow. I would say that all of those states have competent enough leaders to where I think they can win elections. Maybe not necessarily as much specific things, because I don't really know enough about any of these governors, except for in redistricting, Illinois was very, very gerrymandered. But other than that, I don't really know a whole lot about these governors. I would say that likely they're all going to be likely just because of how the state is, but possible that they could get won by the GOP. Who knows? Really, a lot of this is not going to look very impressive in the long run. You're gonna see this after the election and say, how many states did you get wrong? Like 10, 12? But yeah, I mean, for me, having to characterize all of these with the leanings and everything, not going to be super impressive come election day. That's why we're going to have at least one more video, sort of updating where I think things are. Colorado and New Mexico, of course, as I sort of alluded to, we're going to have as leans. I think both of these states, Colorado actually went way more towards the left last cycle, or last election, really. New Mexico was kind of the opposite in that it seemed like it almost went towards the right a little bit. I know that the margin of victory Joe Biden had was larger than Hillary Clinton's, but you do have to remember Gary Johnson was in the 2016 election, and the fact that he wasn't there and the other libertarian, Joe Jorgensen, was there means that New Mexico probably should have been way, way more in Joe Biden's camp. I think that this is part of the trend that you see in Florida, you see in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, where a lot of Hispanic voters have not been monopolized by the Democratic Party as much. And I think, honestly, you're maybe not going to see Republican candidates win the governorships in both of these races, but I think that they're going to be a lot closer, especially with red wave kind of problems that'll the incumbents in each of these states will have. I do think Minnesota is also going to be likely, leans Democrat, because I do think that Tim Walz is going to have a good time. He's doing really well in the polling right now, in the early polling, but I don't think that's going to last. I think it's going to it's going to get a lot closer. It's going to even out a little bit. And Minnesota is probably going to be a giant no. Going into some of the Republican lean states, I think that Georgia will be a leans just because Stacey Abrams will probably get more money than God has ever seen on her side for this. The Democrats have consistently outspent Republicans in recent years, and I think all of their money is going to go into Georgia. This is sort of the opposite as the sort of Lindsey Graham effect that I was talking about earlier. That would be shared by Mitch McConnell, and where their Senate races last year were incredibly heavily spent on, even though it didn't really go anywhere. Just because they hate those candidates. The sort of the opposite effect is going to happen here. They hate to see Stacey Abrams lose again. They really want her to be the governor there. I'm sure they're going to dump all the money. And I don't think that's unfair to say. I think that given the way that things went down in 2018, they were just so looking forward to 2022. Prior to knowing anything about like red wave or blue wave type scenarios, I think that Stacey Abrams is going to do a lot better here than Beto, probably better than whoever is the Florida nominee, Charlie Crist, or I think Nikki Fried was the other one. Not 100% sure. Whoops. And yeah, I think that Georgia's going to be a really close one compared to maybe the Senate race. I don't know, but I think Stacey Abrams, not super popular, but still enough in her own party just to get a lot of push. I think you're going to see Nevada go leans Republican. And this is kind of going to surprise a lot of people. I think Nevada is going to be the next Florida in terms of how last year went. Last cycle for Florida, no one expected that Donald Trump would win Florida by over 3 points. Or at least very few people suspected it. This is kind of a thing building up in the state, going very much rightward of where it was, especially with the Cuban vote and everything, or Cuban American vote. Sorry, but Nevada, I do believe, will be going in the red direction, just like Florida did. Maybe not necessarily for the same reasons, but I get the idea. I get the feeling that there's a lot of sort of anti far left sentiment in Nevada that's going to propel it to the right. Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, I'm also going to put in the leans category, just because I think that in both of these states, I think they're going to be buddies, becoming more conservative together. I think Wisconsin is probably a red state that doesn't necessarily know it yet. I think about 2 or 3 counties in the whole state are actually majority Democrat. The rest are pretty heavy for the Republicans. And I think that evening out the Congress is there. It's just not going to look pretty for the Democrats come November. And yeah, I think that it's going to be a good time for the GOP just in both of these states from backlash. I think that the Midwest has been where you see a lot of backlash happening year to year, and I think that's where you're going to see a lot of backlash here with Wisconsin, with Pennsylvania. I don't think they like a lot of what Joe Biden promised is not what they got in terms of like the pipeline and a lot of oil and everything production wise. I think they're going to see that. They're going to see sort of the sort of odd circumstance that it's put the United States in, relying on foreign powers for energy, and I think that it's gonna affect Pennsylvanians differently than a lot of other people, just because of how their economy is, especially in the western part of the state. Maybe more so just sort of the posturing. I think it's gonna rub Pennsylvanians the wrong way. I don't think it's gonna rub a lot of people in Virginia the wrong way, or New Jersey, or Maine, or New York, or anything. I think it's gonna specifically rub Pennsylvanians the wrong way, and that's why you're gonna see it go leans R. And I think this is going to happen. I'm not gonna say what I think is going to happen in the Senate, but in this governor race, I think at the very least, because neither candidate, Tom Wolf, the Democrat incumbent here, is retiring, so this is actually going to be another flip along with Wisconsin. Tony Evers is the Democrat nominee here. He's not retiring, but I still think he's going to lose. Pennsylvania, open race. Going to be really interesting to see who the nominees are come November. And yeah. So we'll go to our last leans are. Going to be Arizona. And I only think it's going to be leans because I think that realistically, Arizona is not a super blue state. You haven't really seen anything incredibly blue out of Arizona in a long time. And I mean a really long time. I can't think of the last time Democrats won by more than a small percentage of votes here. So I think this is just going to go Republican because it's not going to take very much. Same thing with Georgia. I think that Georgia won't take very much, but I think Stacey Abrams is going to keep it leans. I think Arizona will be a little bit closer than Nevada, closer than Pennsylvania, closer than Wisconsin, but not close enough to put it in tilt. And for the last two states, I'm going to characterize as tilts. I'm going to characterize Maine as a Dem tilt, and I'm going to characterize Michigan as R tilt. And I think that Maine is going to be Dem tilt because you have the incumbent Democrat governor running against a former Republican governor. I think it's, well, at least he's in the primary. Assumedly, he would probably win just because of like the hope that you'd be able to flip the state red once, other than with Susan Collins. I do think Maryland is probably going to go blue, mainly because I think that Democrats in Maine are a lot more consistent, a lot more moderate, just a lot better than Democrats in a lot of other places in the country. And I think that Mainers, or however their demonym works, if it's Mainers, Mainiers, Mainsmen, I'm not sure what they're called, but the people of Maine, I think they're going to hold on with the gubernatorial race, even if that doesn't carry over to the House and the Senate. There is no federal Senate race here this year, but their own state House and Senate could be a little bit contentious. But I think it's going to be close because of the red wave year and just the conditions. I think Maine is going to be among, if not the closest state. And then Michigan as well, I think is not going to be super great for the GOP just because it doesn't seem like they have a lot of good candidates. But I think that Michigan's going to be close. I think that Michigan is going to be the one where you see the Democratic nominee, Gretchen Whitmer, she's the incumbent. I think you see her get ousted just because of sort of pandemic backlash. Maybe in the same way that Ron DeSantis would face if there were a better Democrat challenger. But I think that Michigan is a lot more close to center than Florida is right now. Florida's been going pretty rightward for a while, and the general trend for the nation right now is just going to be rightward temporarily. So, yeah, there's going to be several flips here. Obviously, Kansas is going to flip R from D to R. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are going to flip from D to R. Maine will probably be okay, but could also be another flip, and along with some of these lean states. And for the Democrats, they're going to take back Massachusetts and Maryland. And yeah, that'll be about it. Thank you for watching this video. I'm sure you have a lot of really hot reactions to my hot takes, and you can throw all that hotness in the comments. I'd love to hear any sort of contentious, really inflammatory stuff in the comments. Really, I don't particularly care. I'm not super affected by this. I'm not off-put by sort of odd prediction videos, since especially I've kind of made clear that I don't think I really actually know that much compared to if I were to try and predict the Senate or the House with these races, just because it's so odd, and so many of these primaries have not taken place yet, and this is kind of the one pre-primary video I'm doing for these governor races. If you have anything else you'd like to ask or just kind of get clarification on, I did kind of whip through these pretty quickly, and I'm sure I missed some stuff about them. Just add that in the comments too. Add any of your own opinions, and of course, tell me whether or not you want to see more of this. Do like and subscribe to the channel. Helps a lot, especially with trying to get new viewership, get videos out. Ring the bell for notifications if you want to be notified when I upload, and yeah, see you guys later.